So we have some really incredibly talented technical leaders here next to me today. So I'm going to move a little bit further away because they're always at a different level than me. So we'll go ahead and first off with really brief introductions. Who are you guys? What have you done in the technical world? And then why Seattle? And then there'll be a really fun kickoff to some of the more technical questions about where we're going to have AI and enterprise tech going forward.
All right. So you have a few questions. What you've done in technical side and why Seattle? I don't even know sometimes where to start. I'll start with why Seattle because it's a fun story as usual. So I used to be at a company called ForgeCon in Chicago. I had a couple of startups before then that did not successful. They were not successful commercially. I say they got failed because I felt like I thought we learned more by those that did not work out than anything else. And then we decided that because first two had failed, of course, we would do a third startup. And that was a funny story. So I had just got married, and I was at a company called Social. We were building every single day for Microsoft. And I used to come to Seattle very often to work with Microsoft. So they were trying to recruit me at one point. And we said, no, it's time to go to the startup. So quit the company literally and decided to drive here to do a startup. And said, we should by the way tell my father-in-law that, you know what, I'm moving to Seattle. And so he goes, wait, what? You know your first startup failed, right? I'm like, yeah. And so you're in first startup? I'm like, yes. You just married my daughter? Yes. And you move to Seattle? Yes. How much money do you have? Well, last for 7 months. And those are the reasons, because we looked at money we had in saving and say, you last for 4 months in San Francisco and 7 months in Seattle. So guess where we're heading? We're going to Seattle. So that became where we came to Seattle. So, why don't I pass it on because show you why you get to Seattle? You will come back to other places.
Mention your name, please.
Oh, my name is Samir Mehta. I'm sorry.
My name is Matt. You don't have to hold it close. Yeah, I'll just talk. My name is Matt Fisher. I've been in Seattle since '99. I moved here when I was really young with my family. I had an opportunity to live overseas. I spent some time in Australia. I spent some time in Asia. I spent some time in Europe. And I keep coming back to Seattle. I will never leave this place for good. And there's two main reasons. One is because of the culture of the city being outdoorsy. So hiking, skiing, just kind of the nature aspect that I don't think you can find this anywhere else. And two, the business community. So everything from Boeing to now the tech scene to before that the lumber scene. We've been kind of pioneering the industry. And there's this trend of big companies living here, breathing here, and then setting the tone. That to me is why this is my third startup that I'm doing right now. I will continue to build in Seattle, and it's important to me. And then what I've done in the past, I spent most of my adult career at Microsoft and Amazon. And so in the AI space, well, before it was LLMs, but machine learning, data science, that kind of area. I left Microsoft a couple years ago where I was leading Azure data science and machine learning. I started a company called Daydream. It was one of the first kind of large shopping LLM conversational agent systems. I had a company after that with a guy named Sebastian Thrun in the shopping space as well. And now I'm building something called Adventure, which is the next evolution of media. So it's interactive media that you can talk to. You can use generative systems. It can talk back to you. As an example, you could go to a movie theater and the movie could ask the question to the audience, what do you guys want to see? You can vote on it, you can talk to it, it will change. So we have partners like Disney and Netflix and ESPN and very large movie companies who are using our software and our technology to help build the next evolution of that. So very fun time to be in this space. I think Seattle will be a change agent for not just cloud, but for the new era of called AI.
I'll do the same thing. I can be pretty loud. So I'm Rob Future. How I got to Seattle, I was lucky enough to have a startup that got acquired by Microsoft. And so they encouraged me to move up to Seattle. But honestly, I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but there's about 5 months of the year that I really didn't like living there. And despite being there for 13 years, it was actually fantastic. I'd actually come out to Seattle in 1997. My roommate and co-founder was interning at Microsoft. They just acquired IIS. For those of you who don't remember what that is. And I crashed on this couch. I got a phone book out, for those who don't have to know what that is. And I called tech companies until I got a job. I was the fourth person, I didn't know that when I called them, at a company that happened to be using neural nets to do essentially industrial optimization, but all our customers were using it for financial modeling, which drove the founder crazy. Had a fantastic summer and thought, well, I'll never see that technology again. Yeah, and so I've been here ever since. I stayed at Microsoft for a little bit longer, so I guess I'll jump ahead on that. What have I done exactly? I started off late 90s, early aughts with a startup. Ended up being enterprise software, but I couldn't have told you those terms when we started it. A classic, this is a brilliant technology, there must be a business here, mistake. Then started another startup with a bunch of people from the first one. That's the one that got acquired, got here. I left after staying at Microsoft for quite a while, actually. And then I left when I was CTO at Anaconda, the Python data science. They hate when I say just Python, but Python data science AI company. But I got the urge to do another startup, and so I'm at it the third time, actually with the same co-founder. So I spent the majority of the last 30 years working with the same people. Yeah, and we're in Seattle for a lot of the same reasons. We actually really love the energy here, the community here. I agree. There's a tremendous amount of untapped talent here, and I kind of like. I think the whole I found alpha. Well, I'm going where other people aren't. And I think the focus in the valley is great. It's great there, but I do think that if you're doing what everybody else is doing, how are you going to be better, different, etc. And so I actually very much agree with the thesis that Seattle gives you that advantage.
Yeah, I'll just brief that. So, I'll just from my background perspective, I had again similar story to like many folks over here. So I came from India to my master's in 1990 August. I had my first company in December. I always wanted to do a startup, so that was the first company. It was based on the thesis I was working on for my master's around parallel computing, because it was a pretty big thing at the time. So I did company around the animation and the graphics. And the point you made it, never talked to anybody for almost a year while I was building the whole platform. And I was just telling Weibel that I felt like it was the best platform ever. It was reducing the cost than silicon graphics by like almost 400 times. So that was introduced you to the very first guy in California who had spent lots of time on animation. Flew there, and he loved. Within after first time goes, I love it. It's great. By the way, I've been working on all this time on silicon graphics. As you know, they are the biggest competition. How are you going to move that to a platform? I'm like, oh, moving to my platform. Didn't think of that. He was right. You are saying you compete with them. You have this much less cost. Like I did some homework on how much they charge, but never did anything on silicon graphics. He was go back and figure out where you're going to move things to and come back. Went back, talked to my friend who had done the startup with me, and turned out it would take us 18 months. You just had to read everything. So that startup failed. Then ended up doing another startup called Installation, which was doing lots of installation tool again with Microsoft. 95 just came out, Windows 95. And so spending lots of time with them here, and we did our own startup, and that was all around, because 95 was so good at the user interface at the time, it was a brand new interface. So we did a completely different company on forecasting, and one of the friends was at Mark at the time, same brand worked in company with us. So we did forecasting, they loved it, ended up doing another 40 hours or 60 hours there, completely actually burned out. By the time they say, yeah, we love your product, but by the way, you missed our budgeting cycle. If you want to get paid, you need to actually come to your budgeting cycle. You have to wait for now 6 months for the half yearly. Said, fine, shut it down. Then decided to do a third startup and moved to Seattle for that. And by the time Java had become actually quite big, so we wrote the very first sophisticator. That's actually turned out you're right. We became actually pretty big with the way to prevent reverse engineering with Java. That led into writing the very first micro browser because we could shrink size by quite a bit. So that became the first browser for LG phones and Nextel. At LG, they say, we want to download things on phones. So that turned into writing the very first server to download content in the OS system. Became the largest kind of OS system in the world, China Mobile, China Unicom, got acquired by Motorola. So spent some 5 years there, got bored in another startup that got acquired. So moved to San Francisco for the startup, acquired a mobility company, ran that. When Amazon convinced me to come and join them, so joined Amazon, where all digital platforms were under me at the time. But we had some difference of opinion, so I decided to go back to startup world. And that's just its history. So sorry about taking so much time, but it's so much fun to talk about this.
You guys all have such a different experience, but it sounds like you all came to the same conclusion of one. Startups are where it's the most fun, regardless of what incredible achievement you've done elsewhere. And then apparently Seattle's also the place to be.
Yeah.
But with all the AI stuff happening, I actually have a really interesting question. When did the LLM journey first click for all of you? Was it the minute GPT 3.5 came out? Was it before GPT 3.5? Was it after GPT 5? Are you still not there yet? Where are we at on that?
Okay, I'll just start. And this is how it will be pretty, by the way. So, so no, for me, it started way before. So when I was a CEO at Conviva, if you look at Conviva, we were the real-time data analytics. And we, in fact, now are the foundation for almost all the largest media companies streaming all the way from HBO of the world. So when I joined, we were doing around 2 billion real-time events a day in terms of analyzing it. And so we were already using underlying machine languages. We were already actually building everything we were doing. It's not calling it LLM at the time. So no LLM, but everything we were doing it. And we went from 2 billion to 5 billion real-time events a day. So we started using the loads of the AI in the back end along this time. So that was right. Again, from the LLM perspective, it very much became
From like the what I mean is like from the non-traditional AI, where sorry, from traditional AI, because I worked in computer vision most of my life,
yes.
and that is you train a model, and then the model does a very specific task to this new generative AI. When did you believe?
Okay, so I think in that case, I would probably say that before ChatGPT when it came out, it was keeping an eye, kind of hearing about it, talking to friends, being in California, because at that time I was in California for Conviva, and we had quite a good friends who were working in space.
Um, I was at Microsoft up until, gosh, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, and sitting in Azure, we had a very close relationship to the OpenAI team. So I had previews of kind of what's coming and testing and building to help before the first public version came out. Like, there's two tracks here. The first is the second I saw the capabilities of not a single model to do a specific task and more at that point a reasoning-esque system. It was instant. I knew this was something. The other parallel track is every day I go back and forth on is this real and is this useful and is it not useful. And why I say that is there are certain things an LLM is very good at, like small tasks in an agentic way, creating an image or maybe writing a doc for you. But the memory component of LLMs and the compute component of LLMs, I'm not there yet, right? It hasn't been built in a way where it can facilitate what we want it to be in this holy grail of kind of autonomous system. So I go back and forth. I see the potential, I see the power. We use it every day, but I don't think it's in the final stage of what it will be in this GPT function.
I have I guess a similar story. So that's the second startup was in high performance computing. I won't bore you with the details, at least not here. Happy to do it after. But that rapidly became AI. AI training workloads basically looked like high performance computing workloads. And so I ran the software, I ran the HPC and AI software infrastructure product team in Azure. And so similar thing, we got acquired, and my co-founder, one of his very first, kind of meetings was prepping the guy who acquired us on his meeting with Sam Altman. And so, yeah, we had a bit of a front row seat to that. But I'll be honest, I was actually quite skeptical. I kept hearing these investments Azure was making, and it was a bit of like, really? But it benefited me because I had numbers I had to hit as far as utilization of all this hardware and everything else. And I was like, I'll run any workload you want in my data center. But I kept seeing it, and then my boss, who's still there, was kind of like, no, you're kind of not connecting the dots. And what did it for me was two things. One, I saw how they were using AI to modify traditional high-performance computing workloads to do things that they could not do before. And it wasn't a 15% increase in efficiency, 20%. It was like, we can solve a problem we could not solve before. There was no compute that could do this. And that was actually kind of like, whoa, that was amazing.
Do you remember one of those apps?
Yeah. So what they had done is they were doing, so high performance computing, a ton of different applications. You put a lot of it to change, like physics modeling, like airflow over a race car, fluid dynamics, things like that. So this happened to be a company that was doing air simulation of the airflow over the wind farm, over the turbines. What they were trying to understand was the turbulence caused by the turbines on the other powers in that field. And the physics modeling there was just way too complex. So they were basically using AI to essentially vastly narrow, essentially the search space that they had to then compute over. And I remember the company, I think I can share this, they had mentioned, I won't say the number, but they said the number in terms of efficiency improvement. They were going crazy. And then they finally told me the number. And I was like, you're excited over that, a small of an improvement, and they said, well, that small improvement is like $400 million a year. And they're like, oh yeah, I forget the numbers get big when you're international, whatever. So anyway, but it was talking to people who were doing HPC modeling and realizing like this was just something they could not do before. And the idea that AI was going to augment things and change them that way was the kind of light bulb. And then when I resigned from Microsoft, I used ChatGPT to write a long poem explaining my love for working there, because I really did enjoy working there, and sent that out. And the number of people at Microsoft that were like, whoa, I didn't know it could do that. It was kind of a fun language thing. And again, I had already been converted, but just seeing that it could do that, I think actually weirdly impacted a lot of people, as silly as that was. But again, this is like, I don't know, 800 AI dog years ago. But yeah, and so I went from kind of a very, very skeptical person to like, I mean, we describe ourselves as a startup, we're kind of all in. Although I will say it's a very pragmatic approach. Because it's a startup and we have to kind of survive off of what we do, we have to be very pragmatic about the benefits of what we're working with. I will say this, Beth mentioned, we are big BAML users.
Oh.
Very much. Jason Stowe and Jay Bartow are my co-founders.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we are big BAML users, so you should absolutely check it out. It's fantastically cool, if nothing else, but I think it's way more than cool, obviously, but yeah.
I have never been able to say that. Just to be clear. But
Not yet.
I want to say, like, I think skepticism is how a lot of us started in the AI space. Like, at least for myself, I'm also very similar to Rob in that sense. So my co-founder is not a C++ developer, and for me, the moment was he came up one day and wrote some kernel code for a Mac system that we were working on for previous pivot, and I didn't even know he used AI. He was just like, I solved the problem we had. I was like, no, you didn't. He showed me the code, and I'm a C++ dev, and I was like, I guess you did. And then he told me how he did it, and I was like, this is a feature. And this was November of 2022. And that, for me, was like, it wasn't perfect, but it was so good. And he's not a bad developer. He's an amazing engineer. But he's not a C++ kernel engineer, which is a different kind of engineer. But he did it, and he did it really fast. Something like that would be 3 months of work in less than a week.
It's funny thing on the idea because when I joined Conviva was founded by a professor at Carnegie Mellon, right? And so AI was in the blood, it was doing for the longest time. And so they were already working on some of the very specialized LLM by the time I actually joined the company as a CEO. So to me, it was not even disbelief. I'm like, this is great. LLM always works because some of the things they were building was extremely specific to some of the issues they were already meeting. So it felt like, it's going to work. When we first heard about the ChatGPT, like, oh, this is great. Now it's available to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I have an interesting question, I think, for Matt. So, do any of you know what Matt's current startup does in a little bit more detail? I'd love for you to describe it, and because you go really deep into generative AI. You take generative to the next level, is the way I describe it. I'd love for you to describe it a little bit, and then I'd love to talk a little bit about, especially in the enterprise world, you're selling to these massive companies. How do you get them to trust these systems that are on this generative journey after, I'm sure, once you describe, people understand?
Yeah. So the creative process today is, and I'll talk about it in with technology and without. So if you want to make a video game, a movie, if you're an influencer and want to film content, if you're a student and you want to create some type of education training system, like a Duolingo kind of school, it's a long process and it's an expensive process. So think about movie creation. It takes years sometimes and hundreds of millions of dollars. That process can be compressed with technology, and all of these creators now are getting to the point where they see that. It's an augmentation, right? It's taking pieces of this and making it faster, cheaper, better, and more streamlined. So what we're doing is we're a tool in the creator's workflow that's allowing them to create from scratch, to augment the process that they already have, to stitch things together, or to make their entire flow immersive. And by that, what I mean is you can go to an app, you can, with your voice or text, prompt something that you want. Like, I want to create a video game about a quiz video game about the Seattle Mariners, and I wanted to play on my TV at home, and I want to have up to 100 users, right? You can put that in. Our system will build it for you. It will dynamically create any content you want. It will bake it into whatever TV model you have. It will build the voice generation system and the voice answering system and the scoring mechanics. And within 2.5 minutes, basically, that video game is done for you. It's all built, all on the fly. You can change it however you want. You can custom create any imagery or characters or avatars you want. But that's the process, right? It's a single tool that you can come to that will stitch everything for you. And so that's a very crude example. It goes all the way deep into, like, I want to create a full-length movie with our system. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that integrate with like external tools, right? So for instance, depending on what type of game you want to make, like does it know about Unity or Unreal Engine? Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not in the business of creating our own LLMs or models. Like that'd be crazy to do today when there's so many great applications out there. What we're doing is three core things. One is tapping into the other tools out there. So yes, if you want to be like, I want to create a first-person shooter game with this and this and this that needs crazy physics, yes, tie into Unity and the Unreal Engine or whatever it is. The second is we're running millions of evals across all the models in our ecosystem to understand what model is the best at what capabilities, at what cost, and what latency. And so when you say, I want let's say I want to create a 30-minute show about the universe in the style of Bluey for my kids. And you need to know what model to call that's best for Bluey style cartoons and what voice model can do the accents and where to put it, right? All of those can go. So that eval system is the second thing. The third is the where do you want to distribute part of this, right? Like that's a big thing. Most creators are not creating just for their own YouTube channels in private. They want to put it out into the world. So what we've developed is a way to put all of this immersive content where, let's say you want to create that video, but you want it to be, you want to talk to it and have 3 different paths. If I say I want the background to be blue, you can dynamically change it to blue, things like that. You can natively immerse that into X, TikTok, Insta, wherever you put it, on the fly. You don't have to change anything. All of the backgrounds handled for you, and that distributes out there. Now we have partnerships with Netflix, Hulu, Disney, ESPN, some big movie companies, and then also some up and coming called distribution engines where you can develop and put into those ecosystems as well. And then on our side, we have our own connected TV app. So Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, where all of the content that's generated through our platform lives on those. So you can go, you pay $6 a month, you can play every game anybody's developed, you can watch shows that we've developed, shows make your favorite creators developed, and it all lives in that content. So the question on how enterprise trust, there's kind of 2 sides to this. One is the big companies who are all in, and they're like, hell yeah, I get it. And these are kind of the Netflix of the world. They're like, we know tech is where it's at. We're going to try everything under the sun. So they're kind of leading with trust on this, not for everything. They're like, we're going to give you one tiny bit to test and prove it. Can you handle the scale? Can you handle the infra? And can you handle the creativity aspect? And so we started with that. With them, it was on ads. Like they have a free platform or a free layer of their platform. They run a whole bunch of ads. They wanted a way to take the ads they have and then spin them really fast, like multiply them by N. And so we said, okay, give us advertisers. We're going to create all of their ads 10x. So they create one, we can make it 10x. So that's 10x faster, 10x cheaper, 10x better. And so we started with that. We proved the point out. They're like, great. Now we want content. Let's talk about how we do that. So that's one, where they believe in it. The other is that areas and we'll call it creative outlets that believe AI is a risk to their business. Those are kind of the movie houses. Those are the producers. Those are the After Effects specialists who they've honed their craft. They're the best at what they do in the world, and they see this as taking some of their roles. That was more about proving the point to them that our system has the capabilities to do it all, but that's not the goal of it. The goal of it is to be in the creator's workflow and help them move faster. And so I spent a lot of time in SF going down and talking to the After Effects companies that are in SF and what they are. But a lot of them, in sitting and talking with them, are like, what if I can help you go from 6 weeks on rendering one frame for this big Pixar movie to in a single day, right? Like, how do we help you on that? And so it's very grassroots on some of those efforts. Then also we pumped out a whole shit ton of content on our own using our own tools, and some of them have gone viral where it's like people are starting to see it, and a lot of these conversations are now inbound. So we had calls from everybody from the U.S. Army who is interested in using some of our stuff, all the way to some famous producers that I got starstruck and keep my pants over meeting. And so a lot of it's kind of what you put out, they see, and then small incremental tests to prove that you can actually do it on the scale of what they're putting out. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is, it has become almost an anybody can do statement with demos and betas and tests, but doing it at the scale of, you know, 1 million concurrent users at any given time around the world with no latency and no buffering or generative, like they're very skeptical on that piece, and so these small tests to kind of build it up.
I really love the angle that you said of we're going to build this incredible tech up front, and then we'll sell it for a very low risk use case like ads. We'll earn that trust, and then we'll just upsell for 100x for the next component. And it's really makes sense why you're so successful here. Well, I have a really interesting question for you. You worked a lot in open source, obviously. High performance computing, all the stuff around deployments.
Mhm.
And you talked about how obviously your job was to just fill up the workloads. Open source models.
Yes.
Do they work?
Yes.
Are enterprises using them, or is it made up?
Those are great questions. So so fun. I'll just connect to you for a second. That first company I did in the late '90s was a computer graphics company called Immersive Technologies, and more on that story later. But my co-founder ended up running a render farm for a movie company because we had done some work in the movie industry, no drain at manufacturing. And back in 2004, there was a company called JBoss that had been acquired by Sun. Oracle. They had been acquired by Oracle, and it was an open source company that wasn't Red Hat. And we started off basically providing commercial support and commercial features on top of an open source job scheduler that was used to run the render farm. So that was how that came out. So so you say open source, like yes, I was in Anaconda, but like I spent the majority of 20 years working in open source stuff. Open source models, yes. So what we saw in Anaconda, and I left almost a year ago, so I'm sure it's gone even more so since then. But the open source adoption of models there at enterprises was not great. It was very experimental, but honestly, I think that matched a lot of enterprises' adoption of even commercial stuff. Like OpenAI and Dropbox here, enterprise revenue a year ago is extremely different than it is today. That said, yes, when I still talk to people there, I talk to people and people I kind of meet in the industry, there is real interest in open source models for a whole bunch of reasons. There's still some concerns around security and covenants and all kinds of stuff. But I think my general philosophy, even then, I would give talks, I would say my view is, if I'm trying to hire somebody for a job, I don't look for one person with 6 PhDs and say, you're going to do everything. I hire a team of experts and I manage them, coordinate them, etc. And so my philosophical view towards models was, yes, those foundation models are fantastic, but I just didn't quite see how you wouldn't have specialized applications that I would string together. And that kind of matured into an agentic viewpoint. And so what I'm hearing now and what I'm seeing now a bit is that kind of a thing where people are looking, kind of what you're saying, you're doing these evals to see what is the best model for the best task under the best, given the data we have or the data we can generate, et cetera, and how do we start combining those? I think we are very early. And so the maturity around how companies manage that, secure it, deploy it, et cetera, is not there yet. I know I'll plug in Anaconda. That's one of the things they're working on is helping companies essentially manage that. The way that they help people manage packages and whatnot that they had to install for Python. But no, I don't think there's a ton of enterprise adoption yet. It needs to get more mature first.
When it comes to, let's say, a lot of people that might be wanting to build a startup in the space, I want to hear about it from like two different dimensions. Let's say that there's vertical companies who are just taking a problem and just solving end-to-end leveraging AI, and there's horizontal companies that are building infrastructure to go do it. Would you recommend vertical companies to try open source models, or would you just say nope, just use the top shelf frontier models out there? And some of you guys may have opinions as well. Or would you recommend infrastructure company build around servicing open source models, or would you say no, build open source around the frontier models and tooling around them?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I think things are changing very, very fast. I was very surprised by how capable some of the open source models. So originally I was very much toward the open source side. I thought from a data provenance, from a we have control over it, the foundational model companies are going to charge too much, we don't get locked into a single product, like all these reasons that I was even seeing where people had this fear of in the past I got all locked into Microsoft or I got all locked into Oracle or something, and then they ate up all my margin what do I do if I, in the model space? And so I actually thought the open source models would really pull ahead, and then the foundational model capabilities got so good that but then all of a sudden, you had that the DeepSeek moment earlier this year, and then you have all these McKinney and blah blah blah. Clan, you can see the model rankings and you can try them out. And so I think it's kind of a neck and neck race. I would, to your point, not compete with the model developers. But I guess I keep my options open. So our product is enterprise software, but we let our users pick the model they want to use. So we have used models for our own development. We obviously have opinions, we give guidance, but we are trying to be flexible that way. And so I'm kind of letting that shake out on its own. What would I advise people to do? I advise people to try to find real value or real problem they're solving that isn't, I know this is cliche, but it's not just a wrapper around the model. Like the shortcomings that the models have, yes, they're addressing them, and it's going to be a race to stay ahead of how fast they are. That keeps me up at night. At the same point, there is serious challenges that you can solve leveraging the models as part of your tech stack. That is going to be incredibly valuable for companies. And at that point, just pick the model that works best. Build the eval system, give yourself flexibility, and really focus on the business problem that you're trying to solve, and not just whatever kind of latest I don't want to say gimmick, but the latest kind of technical advancements.
I'm going to add on what Rob said, but with a little different viewpoint or mindset. I think I'm right now advising some startup and other exactly looking at the same problem, now question. So my approach is a little bit more philosophical as practical. When you are a startup, you don't have much money to burn. That's number one. When you are a startup, you still have not fully identified all the use cases to figure out what really works well for what you want to do. When you are a startup, you have a very dedicated small team about where they can focus on and what they can do. So the approach I tell them is a little bit different. Till you fully know where the company is going to go 100% full steam, you do not want to end up looking down into a very specific platform, because what I found out that, yes, you can actually go through some of the commercial one as well, but depending upon who you actually talk to, all of them are in neck-to-neck race. So who end up going to end up providing you better tools at what price point, they're completely shifting over the day. And so my biggest thing to the team that I work with is truly understand your use cases. So again, going back to business understanding and context understanding. Depending on what business cases you're trying to solve, because as a startup, you can go those, you are going to have very specific target of what you're going to do. So look at those use cases. And today in this world and age, you have definitely a best way to think of abstraction, right? Put MCP server, make sure you end up supporting and abstracting heck out of few of the things you're working on. Try it out. And especially as you start monetizing, there's another thing with startup. You do not have money flowing in yet. So you cannot simply keep on spending heavy money into the number of the tokens you kind of give it to OpenAI of the world. So depending upon what you do, you end up abstracting it, you end up start using the use cases, and when you start monetizing it, and depending upon where you are, if you are raised money already, you have a way to end up investing a little bit more aggressively, then it becomes a little bit different. But if you are in an early stage, you haven't raised the money yet, then you have to end up thinking about how do I stretch the investment we have ourselves to go a little bit further. So to answer the question, I think that if you are a startup, my personal advice, what I found is work, is that you do want to end up thinking about how to develop it more into the open source, but at the same time, abstract it out, because some of these commercial versions, there's some really excellent functionality if you're going to use a specific use case. And if you know how much of the money you're going to spend on that, it's good to spend it. When your business model that you're going to end up start charging your customer for, just kind of paying for it, or you can kind of only pay a little bit from your pocket and you are getting some money from customer, fine, use actually commercial version because it pays really well. But you have to really understand where you are, it's contextual. So don't end up going blindly one versus another one. You have to end up thinking about abstraction where you are.
I can add something.
Please.
I'll start with a spicy comment, which means benchmarks are bullshit and don't mean anything. They're numbers, and throw that out of your head. I think a lot of people get too locked down into, oh my gosh, Kidney K2 is ahead of 5.1. I got to bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. It comes to your use case. Your use case is, what are you building that you need a specific model for? A specific model, not a generalized model, but a specific one. Go figure that out. The reality is, if you're a young startup and you're just starting, if you have money or not, park that aside, pick one. Go down that path. You're gonna burn time. Time is the one thing that you can't get back. You can raise more money. You can, go sell to any more customers. Time is a challenging thing because there's 100 competitors. So my personal perspective is don't spend as much time researching the models up front. Spend some time, don't just pick one, but spend a little time, pick one, and go down that path and see what works and doesn't work. If it's not working for you because it's too slow, if it's too costly, if it's too bloated, if you can't put the data in the right provenance that you need, go find the alternative, but don't spend so much time because it's irrelevant. Your customers don't care what model you're using for most part. They don't care how much you're spending on the tokens. They care, does it work? Is it secure? Is it fast for what I want? That's where I think a lot of the building now is getting too locked down in benchmarks and stats and flows.
Matt, I had a question for you. I understand about how you were discussing about how you should first see and kind of figure out the general consensus, like what you should do, what model you should use. But imagine you have kind of a prototype as a startup itself. You have a prototype, you have an idea, you want to go forward in it, but you don't know how to go forward. You're kind of stuck up. Oh, I have this product. I can do this. I can ask people. But I don't have a product that I can present that is good enough to that stage. What should I do?
Good enough is a subjective term, right? So I would get more objective around what you think is good enough and why you think it's good enough.
Okay.
And if that means the demo isn't working end to end, it could work end to end. And I'm a big fan of asking real users to test my stuff, even when I know it's shit, because I get better feedback and it'll grow that way. So ask for feedback. Those around you, your peers.
Just ask for feedback.
Yeah, to get more objective around what is good enough mean for you.
Okay. Can I add on that real quick? 100% agree. Two pieces of advice. This is oversimplified, but there's a book called The Mom Test. Read the Mom Test book. Just read it. It'll give you great common sense advice on how to talk to users. If I read that in the late 90s, maybe my first start would fail. Also, don't sell yourself work and don't pre-neg yourself. Your stuff's not good enough because somebody told you it's not good enough, or you told yourself it's not good enough. Don't do the latter. I've done it a million times. Let them tell you it's not good enough. Here's the thing. I love giving people my feedback on that stuff because I appreciate that they're trying and I know what they're going through. There's a lot of people that are going to give you honest feedback and will critically help, criticism, but in a trying to help you way. So yeah, show it to somebody. Get their feedback, listen, try to understand, but don't talk yourself out of it before you've had that.
That book is by far, if you're running a company, go read that book. It will simplify a lot of people, for a lot of people, especially deep technical challenges. But it's called The Mom Test. The Mom Test. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's a very great read. Yeah. And there's you can try to summarize it. Yeah, honestly, you probably just do that. What I really love about what all three of you said about the question I asked is all three of you had completely different answers. But what I really love to summarize all of it is each of you had basically said there's a framework that you're using. Samir said, if you're a startup, optimize for revenue, use an open source model. He tried to make a really fast decision of what to say. Matt said, don't worry about the model, just pick one, go solve it. Fast decision to make a proxy so you're not stuck in analysis paralysis. Rob said, we're just going to let our customers choose, we won't make the decision for them. The point here is I guess what I'm hearing is, you don't have to spend forever spending this. Just make a decision, move forward, build the business.
And that, by the way, that applies to everything. Do not read the latest Hacker News post on whatever the latest coding agent is, and retool your workflow. One of the great things about Seattle, there's a bunch of startup communities here. Let the community kind of distill which things are good practices, which cool tools, whatever. The difference between Codex and Quad Code and whatever, it doesn't matter as much as you shipping whatever the next thing you need to ship and learning whatever you need to learn.
So if Rob says BAML's great, BAML's great. But Samir, I have a really interesting question for you. You've been working in so many different domains throughout your whole career. I think we were talking about it earlier, the Java obfuscator that you were talking about. You were able to shrink Java code bases by what percentage?
More than 30 to 50%.
30 to 50% for Java binaries that are deploying out there. I could imagine a lot of people that are shipping prompts saying something very similar. I want my prompts to be obfuscated. I want people to decode what my prompts are. I want my prompts to be smaller. How do you take some of the parallels from your past and think about how enterprises might think about some of these problems?
I sometimes feel like it's deja vu, like I'm living in a world that keeps spinning back to whatever it was, in fact, before all these years. So the point that Weber is making, he was talking earlier, so the company fourth path that eventually going to bring all different especially with the browsers and content delivery system, started with an obfuscator. So point two is, but one thing, just an off topic, but to realize that when you start worrying about you want to obfuscate it, you want to start thinking about a smaller size, which means that you already made it. So at that time, the reason the Java, nobody cared earlier about, hey, you either decode it or whatever you want to do is fine. But once you started generating revenue, you were building a product, it was not only for enterprise. You are started actually shipping out to a large number of people. And if it's an obfuscate, you get the source code within like the next 10 minutes and start competing, that's when it starts becoming a problem. So I think we're going to actually get to a very much similar stage about what we're doing here. So I think this also comes down to where the future is going to head. Is it going to be purely in the cloud? It's on the edge, in between? What happens with the prompt? Does prompt become the language, what you do? So I think that as we get there, I actually believe it's actually going to a stage where prompts, it becomes your IP about what you actually want to do and how you're doing it. And when prompt becomes your IP, then ensuring that nobody starts copying your prompt, immediately what you have done will start actually coming down to it. Because imagine that, depending upon what you've done with your prompts, you are getting this absolutely correct output in the structure you want that ends up really giving the tone, the modality, whatever you want is in a particular prompt itself. And that all comes down to prompt. So I very much believe that we are going to start seeing similar things.
And to double click on that analogy a little bit more, what I found really fascinating, the more I thought Samir and we were discussing this, is Java code was the first time where we shipped code on the edge. You had desktop apps and native apps that you were deploying, and all the code ran right there. What about in that AI world? Is all inference going to run in the cloud? Is all inference going to run on the edge? And if it runs on the edge, like you said, all the IP is
That's right.
it available for free?
That's right. Now, I personally believe that, this is, I have seen as part of the evolution of every single thing that keeps on evolving and developing. So where we are, right now, you see a lot of the things happening on the cloud, and partially for two reasons. One is everything is a GPU based, which means that, you cannot end up having a cost-effective GPU running on your edge, the different story. Then there are companies like, I was talking to you earlier about my friend, Ramsey is doing a symbolic mind. It's all about using CPU to end up doing lots of inference work that actually is trying to do. And so there are many of those folks working on that one. But I think if you actually fast forward a few years out, I truly believe that you are going to start thinking about the micro models which can run on the edge anyway. You don't need to end up, having the shebang, every single thing running you need. But depending on your use case and the problem you're trying to solve, I believe that they're going to start having an ability to end up running some of the smaller models which will run right on the edge. And at the same time, new technology evolving, which will allow your CPU to run, again, in a very specific use cases. So I think there's going to be the large models are going to continue to run in the cloud. Like, if you're actually going to build like OpenAI, then there's no way you're going to end up running something on the edge, you'll be running in the cloud. But as you start seeing the use case about very specific, let's say you are running a game you talk about, or media, if you are doing some very specific things that could be done on the edge, there might be a smaller model that actually works there. So I think it's going to be both, but eventually I think you are going to see lots of use cases moving more and more toward edge.
All of you, thank you for that summary. All of you are really deeply involved in the startup scene. And personally for me, one of the things that gives me deep anxiety when I go on Twitter and I go see things is 100 million revenue in 6 months. It's normal now, right? How do you rationalize that? Is it real? Are these numbers made up? How is the startup scene going to change now with AI? Do businesses also just move faster?
I can start.
This is for all of you, yeah, please.
I will never say anybody's numbers are not real because that's like they have their math.
Unless you go on TikTok and talk about 4 million.
I won't judge anybody's numbers because I don't know the specifics on it. But I will say I do not think the rate at which we're seeing ARR or MAU or DAO or WOW, like whatever metric you want, it's not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable because the marketplace is going to get crowded and users aren't going to be as freely available. And I don't think the revenue figures that we have will persist and sustain. So I think these are amazing.
The revenue what?
Numbers will persist.
Oh, yeah.
So I think these are Cinderella stories that we're starting to see, and they're becoming more common. 100 million ARR in 2 months, 6 months, a year, like that's just not feasible for 99.9% of companies starting out. Like so
we can still win if we don't get those
yes,
ads.
yeah, everybody can, yes. I guess what I want to at least distill is like, it is great to look at those companies and work backwards and say, how did they do it? What did they do? But do not try to copy and mirror them, right? Like there are very few companies that are going to do what Cursor has done on growth. There are very few companies that are going to do what the PowerPoint one, Not
Oh, sorry.
started to see a blinking on the name.
Canva.
Canva has done. And so like look at what they're at and like try and go there, but don't expect 100 million, 600 million, fastest app to get users and his like it's just not it's not realistic, and I think it's setting a bunch of builders up for failure, to be honest. And I think if you look at the venture community, there's a lot of hype around these companies and where they're at and looking at numbers, but a majority of people, at least the ones that I've talked to, care more about scaling. Like, how can you scale, not how fast you can scale, how sticky can you make your product, and what's the math and logic behind your revenue model, right? Like, I don't think, and again, I'm not sitting in their seat, I'm not an investor, but the comments that I've had are less about can you get to 100 million in 6 months? Like, that's known to be edge cases. That's my personal opinion.
I'm going to tell you a very specific story. Sorry.
No, be honest.
So this is where I think that me going between different verticals somehow blending there teaches me three different things. So right now I am working with a big investment bank. We help companies to end up getting acquired, like normal M&A stuff. So this is where it comes down to, right? So I'm coming back to the answer you just question you asked and you just kind of mentioned. So we ended up meeting with the founders recently, I'd say 8 months ago. They went from zero to, I think I can share without giving the anyway, zero to 18 million in like 9 months. Again, great way, right? They started you on. And so they decided that, hey, you know what? We are piggybacking heavily on the AI. So we don't want to end up taking this company to $100 million. We have to sell it. We don't want to end up, so they came to us and we said, hey, this is great. It's an AI world, everybody's buying AI companies. It should be so easy to sell these guys. We should be able to actually get you out with a really good, and we truly believed it. And we started working with them, we put together, we had a large interest. We were talking to 100 plus from PE to the private to the strategic, because these guys were shown that they can grow rapidly. And this is where the speed bump came as people started looking at giving the valuation. They loved it. Oh, this is great. You're going through now 0 to 18 million. Now, and this is a very interesting guy because we love it. We are going to acquire, but before we can put valuation, show us, is it really now a structure so that if I end up putting X amount of money into marketing, I can generate Y amount in revenue? They're like, oh, no, we are doing all word of mouth. Oh, word of mouth means it can fail tomorrow and I cannot generate. What would happen if word of mouth suddenly doesn't go anywhere? Are you going to go from 18 million to 2 million? Or so they say, sorry, we are not going to actually touch it. We are going to actually let it go. You are doing great, guys. Keep on doing it. When you end up having the numbers after 2 years, come back and talk to us. It did not go with them. Second guys, they said, we love it. So they started doing due diligence. And they said, okay, help us understand how did you actually go from 0 to 18 million? And they said, look, we ended up having this product, we ended up putting this other things on social media, it ended up going like a fire. And also, who is actually doing the social media thing we're doing? Oh, we ended up getting a freelancer, she did a great job. So what if she leaves tomorrow? Who is going to generate this 80 million? Or we'll find somebody else, but have you proven it? No, sorry, we are not going to actually go with you, they will wait. So there are two sides of the coin here. First and foremost, to the specific question you asked, I think that good and bad news come out always, whether you like it or not. Whether you are kissing on a cam somewhere or whether you generate 100 million, it's going to come out. So that's going to be the case. So those who are making 100 million, it's great for them, it just comes out. But for all those who don't generate 100 million, people who build sustainable business are the ones that are really getting money in terms of whether it's acquisitions or whether they are seen as from the VC perspective too. In fact, I was talking to, because I'm part of the LPO of one of the VCs here, and so is in fact Ken is here, I'm not sure. But anyway, so when they start looking at putting money into it, they would love to know the companies that do that much amount of money, but they are not truly looking at saying that, hey, we actually expect you to end up doing this 0 to 18 million within 9 to 10 months. They want a sustainable company where once you develop, you can consistently end up, in fact, building the company. So I don't know if it answers your question.
No, I think that was actually very fun anecdotally to hear, actually.
Can I have one piece though that I just want to add? Don't care about 100 million in 6 months. Care about the first N, whatever the N is. Care about the first customer. After the first customer, care about the next 5 customers. After that, care about the next 100 customers. Don't worry about milestones on revenue until you have to. Meaning, like, you have some type of investor who wants to see a return at some rate. Care about
the first customer and solve that problem for them. So I just want to clarify, like my comments are, not everybody's going to hit that, but it doesn't mean you can't.
That's right.
Care about your customer.
Yeah, no, perfect. I would often talk to startups or even my own experience where somebody's like, oh, we're gonna add this feature, we're gonna get 50,000 users to use it. We're like, great. What's the name of the first one that's using it? And every time they talk in big numbers, it's like, I don't want to hear the 10,000 users. I want to hear what Niranjan or Melissa or Steve think about this. And so yeah, I couldn't agree more with what he said. Philosophically, like strong right there. My whole guiding principle here for me is I want to make the world a better place, and I'm going to capture some of that value for myself. And so if I'm wealthy and successful, hopefully it's because I made the world that much better in a small part of the community. So when you look at these things of like companies going to 100 million in ARR, et cetera, like to some extent, like is the pie getting bigger for everyone that much faster? And if it isn't, you're not seeing companies 10 times what they're doing by using these services, then it's more zero sum, which means that they are not spending that money somewhere else. And by definition, not every company can go from 0 to 100 million in 12 months if the pie isn't getting that much bigger in 12 months. And so try to find problems that will make the world a much better place. And it is much easier to help people solve problems, to get them to buy your stuff. But then you kind of know that as long as you keep making the world a better place and capturing that value, you can grow. You can maybe 100 million, whatever. You're not in a situation where what you're really just trying to do is take the money from somebody else. And I'm not casting shade on businesses and stuff that do that. You have a new clothing company, that's great. Nike sells less clothing, or whoever sells less clothing because you have started clothing. Great, good for you. But I think I like non-zero sum stuff where everybody can kind of win. And right now, Spicy Tape, I'm not seeing the pie growing that much bigger. Everyone's betting at some point the pie's going to grow really, really big, and I am a believer in that. But I do think there's a lot of companies right now that are their timing for when that pie's going to get bigger is maybe not quite aligned. So we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the pie does get bigger that much faster because that's great for all of us.
That's actually a great way to frame it from the perspective like how do you think model the decision making as a founder on your own. I have one last question for all of you, which is the world is changing really fast. 5 years from now, what is not going to change? What can you reliably bet on if you're making a business that enterprises, customers are still going to want? And no matter what your business does, if you do that, you're still going to win.
I'll jump in. People are people. People have always been people. They're always going to be people. I know that's not stupid. What I mean by that is every once in a while, you hear a business idea where it's like, this technology means people will fundamentally behave differently than they've ever behaved in human history. That is not going to happen. And so if you are helping people with their, with the time that they don't want to waste, with, connecting with others, with getting their work done faster, with dealing with their insecurities, there's all kinds of things about how people interact that are just universally true. I'm not saying they're all the same, but it's the general human condition. And so I think I always kind of react badly when I hear somebody thinking, it's like, well, people would have to behave differently than they ever have, and that's not going to happen. So anything you can think about how would you respond in a situation, you can personalize the stuff, right? And when I think of the future, I love the like Jetsons or whatever Star Trek, pick your sci-fi. But at the end of the day, you'll notice that all the successful sci-fi stuff all depends on the drama between people. That doesn't change.
And what's the bet that your company's making? I know that.
Yeah. So what we do at AirSignal, we're kind of stealthy, but we have run into this problem where, honestly, no one knows what the hell's going on. There's more coming at us than ever before, and that is infinitely harder when you have to get groups of people to work together. And so we believe that we can solve a problem where, at the Microsofts of the world, the Icons of the world, all the companies we talk to, small, large, with the left hand and right hand don't know what they're doing. That isn't going to change. I don't care how many agents you're running. In fact, it probably gets worse whenever he's running a team of agents, because now I have to know what you're doing and the 20 agents you have running are doing. So I think the general idea of helping people organize and align efficiently and effectively, and we're betting that problem is never going to go away.
5 years, 10 years, 100 years, everybody in the world is still going to be cost conscious and wants a cheaper or lower cost variant of whatever it is that you're doing. Like that will never go away. The speed at which it happens will change, but that will always be. So in 5 years, my bet is people will want inference cheaper, they will want compute cheaper, they will want whatever SaaS you're selling cheaper. And the way we're handling that is again going through evals and saying, no matter the model, we have an option for you on whatever cost tier that you want to be at. If you want free, we can handle that. If you want a little better than free, better output, we can handle that. And so our focus is, and this is for any vertical, not just ours. It's how do you think about your market, and how do you think about providing even at a higher quality, a lower demand cost.
Can I ask one quick follow-up on that? Do you actually cut users off from using certain capabilities if they're on a free tier because it just won't be good enough?
We will never cut, so this is a core principle list, we'll never cut a user off from using the platform. We will either downgrade some services, meaning like it will take N more hours to process or minutes to process, or we have this function that we're actually testing now, which is run out of credits and you're generating something, we'll give you the credits for free, but you gotta get the feedback on the tool. So we pop up like, hey, you're out of credits, spend 5 minutes answering these questions, we'll cover your token cost.
That's
So
what
it's a great way for us to get like user feedback, and we'll cover that generation for them. So right now, I think we have about 10,000 people so far who have hit the limit, and we've triggered that. We're at like 90-something% of people who give us the feedback.
Going back to impact, I look at it philosophically, where first, and the one thing that will never change, I truly believe that technology is meant to business end. That's never going to change. Today is ChatGPT 5, tomorrow it will be ChatGPT 15, 30, it doesn't really matter what version it is, what technology it is. There will always be the evolution in the technology. And when you use it as a baseline, think about what else is going to actually keep on remaining same or changing it. What is going to remain same? There will be a need for people to end up figuring out how to find value in the technology and monetize it. There will be a reason to figure out how it's going to be buggy enough and it's going to cause problems, and how it's going to require a way to end up testing it differently. There's always going to require the same way to say that, hey, what does governance and the security mean? Because complexity actually keeps on increasing more and more. And last but not the least, the need for trust is never going to go away. It's going to remain the same. It doesn't matter really what you are building it. I think that as a startup, the way I think about it is that you keep that in mind, that technology is meant to business end, and you evolve around what happens, and you will keep on evolving your own products, your own business. I think that's what's going to remain the same. You are going to find many different new things to have fun about, but that's probably going to be it.
I want to give a big round of applause to our three guys.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.